every pharma company today says they're doing AI. Where do you actually see AI creating real value inside a pharma organization or in general pharma organizations today?
There is an inherent challenge with AI that it's confidence, but it's not calibrated. So it comes across as authoritative, as fluent, but it's also wrong. And healthcare has no room for errors.
As far as AI is concerned, where does it actually survive in the ecosystem today, where it meets actual healthcare environment or pharma environment? And where does this product actually quietly collapses?
Accuracy of a model is not equal to a clinical trust. So if your model is 98% accurate, that will not really translate to a 90% clinical trust.
AI transformation in pharma is not about innovation, it's about endurance.
It's about consistency. Only 15% of pilots within pharma ever get to a real phase 1. But nobody's really talked about what after pilot.
So meaning that says 85 out of all 100 projects in the pharma start with no long-term goal.
Not start, they end with no long-term goal.
What do you think is the biggest lie the healthcare industry or pharma industry tells itself about AI? Hi everyone. Welcome back to the best AI show in pharma. Today we have a very interesting guest, Dr. Neha Gupta. Neha has had a pretty unique journey. She started as a clinician, moved into digital health and product building, and has spent years working across the pharma and healthcare ecosystem, building real digital products that actually have to survive the real world. So, regulators, compliance, audit, patients, everything. So, she's one of those rare people who has seen healthcare from inside the clinic and inside the product team and also inside the pharma system. Also, she's an Ironman athlete, which means she voluntarily, which I really fail to understand, she voluntarily runs, swims, and cycles for insane distances. So clearly, she enjoys the pain much more than the rest of us. Neha, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Ayush, and thanks for the warm words. And I think there is some truth to the element of wanting to have pain in life because life in generally also keeps providing pain without asking for it. And here we are signing up and paying for it.
But I mean, if anyone asks me to be an Ironman athlete, my philosophy is going to be I already have enough pain in my life.
I mean, the only other difference, the only excitement here was going to be an additional medal at the end of the finish line.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So let's start with the journey actually. You've been a clinician, product builder, and someone who looks at healthcare systems more broadly. And people generally stay in one lane in healthcare, which is also quite enough sometimes. What made you step back and think, that I just don't want to work inside the system. I just don't want to sort of work in one single lane, and I want to experience the entire highway.
Yes, and I think when I look back on my journey, I think it's one thing is clear, it was not a single defining moment. It's actually a collection of experiences, a collection of frustrations, a collection of insights which which have sort of led me from starting as a clinical service provider to being a product leader to being this ecosystem builder that I find myself to be in. So part of it is experience and learning, and part of it is being intentional about impact. And I want to say that when I was being a clinician, I think the intent was very much around how do you improve patient outcomes, how do you improve treatment outcomes, and slowly realizing that technology can do much more in impact than what it was doing. I started finding myself in rooms where there were great insights, there were great people, product people. But what was missing was the implementation. Things were getting handed off, and in this handoff, things were getting lost. So I want the intention here was to be that one person who can actually stitch this continuous theme, so who understands healthcare, who understands what patient needs, who then I then works towards getting the product experience, becoming a product leader, develop the systems thinking to ultimately getting to a place where the impact is maximized. And this is how I find you.
That's so true. Actually, I'm going to take you back to a conversation we were just having before we actually hit record button, and we were talking about how our journeys in the past, the colleges we went, and the decisions we took at that time, not knowingly anything, actually shaped up who and what we are doing today. So, just for the context, and especially in the context of the Indian culture, I want to talk about because, a lot of audience that we have on the podcast are generally from the US. From the Indian standpoint, can you sort of talk about how does this agility, that, you can learn to be a clinician and then can easily switch on the product side and then you can become an AI expert. This demands a special set of skill, a special set of agility to be thinking into that direction. And when the opportunity presents itself, so you must be a clinician one day, and then an opportunity presented itself, and you had two choices: whether to continue on what you know best, or just to sort of start wandering into uncharted territory. You know what what is it in those initial formative years of our lives, or your life in Jaipur growing up, that sort of defined or sort of gave you the courage to go into the uncharted territory?
So I think that's a very good question, and something that you only start, or rather, something one that I only started appreciating once I left India. It's been more than, I think, 10 years since I've lived in India, and more than 20 years that we were discussing that I've actually lived in Jaipur. But what Jaipur Foundation does, which I'm very proud and which I think is very characteristic of a tier two town upbringing, is the value belief system it instills in you. That even today, when I am 8,000 kilometers away from my family, I know that I have a family behind me. I'm not alone. I have never been alone. Across till today, I think I've lived in more than 8 cities. And five of those cities, I didn't really speak the language. And even, with these drastic environments and situations, you know that you're not alone. So that is, I think, a very good security and a foundation to begin and shape your outlook towards change. The other thing I think is more about an individual perception. So as a person, I'm a very curious person, and a person whose curiosity to an extent that it's, I think, at some point in time it's a disadvantage. And that has been the foundation, and not foundation, but that has been the driver for all of these different experiences. And one thing that I feel like I don't agree with you fully about opportunity presenting itself. I think it's less about opportunity and luck presenting themselves, but it's more about how you want it to be. Because
To manifest it to be.
exactly, because I think there is this very famous saying of Steve Jobs that connecting the dots. Whereas I think there is a slight change, and there is, you choose the dots you want to connect. Because our life has so many experiences. And like we were discussing today, just before the call, just before the recording, that at some places your experiences are not intentional, but when you look back, you choose what you want to connect, and then suddenly it makes a beautiful story. So I think it's a collection of both.
And I think this is such a such a nice starting point to my another part of the discussion as well, because that's precisely how you generally structure AI as well. I mean, which is connecting the dots. So when you sort of create an AI strategy, this is precisely the methodology that you follow, which is the decision that I take today. How does that change the outcome of tomorrow?
Mhm.
Uh, you know, so let's delve into right away the big buzzword right now, which is AI. Every pharma company today says they're doing AI. But from where you sit across the ecosystem in pharma, in healthcare in general, where do you actually see AI creating real value inside a pharma organization or in general pharma organizations today? So where do you see it creating real value? Not just dashboards, but where do you see it creating value for actual decision making?
Mhm, mhm. And I love your disclaimer, not just dashboards, because I think that's the most hyped place
Oh, yeah.
where everybody is talking about an AI generated dashboard, and there is nothing, there is no AI behind it.
Yeah.
I think in digital health, the areas where and I say digital health because to me it includes broader than pharma, and it actually incorporates the end users who are our patients and the care team. And in digital health, there are three areas where AI has significant impact so far. One is, of course, your drug discovery. And we have enough examples today to show how AI can help you in targeted, focused molecule identification. The one example that comes to my mind is in silico medicine. I think they were able to bring a molecule to phase two in around about 4 years, which is half the time that is required usually by the traditional route. So that's a significant impact, both from cost, timeline, and ultimately treatment outcome perspective.
Yeah.
The other element where I feel, again, this is the clinical trial space where AI has been impactful is the patient recruitment and the AI assisted site identification for clinical trials. Also, expanding the label by helping fulfill the critical sample size and extension of label. For instance, the Pfizer's Iberance is a great example of breast cancer drug, where with the help of real world data, Pfizer was able to extend its label of the breast cancer medicine for male patients because the incidence of breast cancer in male patients is 1%. And by virtue of that incidence rate, it was impossible for them to have a sample size in clinical trial to show the efficacy. But this is where they partnered with Flatiron and were able to actually demonstrate the safety and efficacy and extend the label of the drug. So I think these are the places where AI has been significantly instrumental. The places where the other category is the admin element. So within pharma today, uh, within pharma, a lot of admin related tasks, the internal focused tasks can be taken care of by AI. And when you do that, you actually identify and you release some capacity for higher order thinking. You release some capacity for more human trust based decisions and a more supervision of what the motor models are doing. So I feel like those are the areas where AI today has been doing great job. The areas where AI still has a bit of a leg up to get to is personalization. So we talk about patient personalization. It's not there yet. This is mostly a GPT wrapper on a rule based engine, a very poor patient segmentation, and it's unfortunate because every time we are doing a conversation, whether I'm at the vendor side or I'm at the non-vendor side and buying side,
Yeah.
I know I know that this is a lie that is very carefully gift wrapped and everybody is accepting it because there is no other way to it right now. And one of the reasons there is no other way for it is because our regulatory and the compliance frameworks have not caught up to there. So we
Yes.
are actually not able to deliver that kind of kind of personalization that AI has the capability. And I don't want to say it's only because regulatory and compliance, but it's also because at some there is an inherent challenge with AI that it's it's confidence, but it's not calibrated. So it comes across as authoritative, as fluent, but it's also wrong. And healthcare has no room for errors. So I think it's a very interesting problem space to be operating in.
And I agree with you, and especially with the personalization, because even in our day to day, and you would receive multiple emails where you can easily say, "Oh, this email was written by GPT, and this is actually a person that wrote." It's so easy, right?
Very
So, somehow Chat GPT has got a personality of its own, which is so you can tell this is a GPT email. I mean, so I have actually completely stopped using ChatGPT to write my personal emails because at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like I wrote it, even if the message is the same. So I agree with you, and I want to take you back to a very important use case that you mentioned. And if I'm being honest, this is the first time that someone has identified this as an interesting use case, which is the real world example that you took for identifying the right patients or identifying the right sites. Uh, and I would like to say thank you for it because that's also a bit of a validation for us. We recently launched a product called Alpha Dev while we were at SCO, and that product, so we partnered with Komodo Health, which is one of the majors in real world data in the US. And we created a platform on top of Komodo Data's Health that helps. We just upload the protocol, you just type in what your IE criteria are, or even just specific, random specifics. It then converts them into your IE criteria, and then it you goes takes all that IE criteria to your Komodo data set, and then brings back some very interesting insights on where your right patients are exactly. And then we have a proprietary data set on site intelligence. We have intelligence on 1.2 million sites globally. So Komodo's data tells you where the patients are and which sites are they available at, and then our site intelligence runs on top of it. And the idea is exactly what. And to be honest, I didn't know about the Pfizer example. I should have. But so this is a very nice validation, and I think that's also uh, something which I want to sort of expand further on with you. When we show it to a lot of our clients, 8 out of 10 clients are surprised that, oh, real world evidence can be used like this as well.
Mhm.
So you saying it so confidently, oh, this is something that should be done, versus the conversation now we are having, and we are speaking across the spectrum. We're speaking to CROs, obviously sponsors. We're even speaking to the recruitment agencies. And, as I said, 8 out of 10 guys tell us, oh, we never thought real world evidence is to be used like this. What do you have to say about that? I mean, how is there so difference, in sort of understanding the.
Yeah, no, but I think Ayush, that's something that we briefly touched upon is one of the biggest challenges of AI adoption. Today, the AI adoption, more often than not, is considered as a procurement acquisition decision. Which company, which tool, which model, who. But ultimately, acquisition is different from adoption, and which is what you're highlighting, right? So, at some level, adoption is inherent on organizational change program. As an organization, which is the building blocks of an organization are your teams and your culture, they need to change and adapt in a way that there is balance of innovation, there is balance of people who are saying that this is the constraint, these are the guardrails, and allowing impact. Because what happens more often than not is that people are very siloed in what they're doing. They're very siloed in their day-to-day activities, and then they hear these buzzwords about AI, but because they're so siloed, they're not really able to appreciate the impact potential, and all they're able to see is what comes on their desk and what comes on their calendars.
So you, and obviously, you are you're one of the person in your organization, I would assume, whose job is to actually solve exactly that. How can more and more people sort of contribute to create that digital impact? And I would love to have that gossip from you. I know you are not going to give it to me, but which is that team, that you guys sort of, it's the most difficult to sort of get together on a product. Is it the clinical guys? Is it the commercial guys? I'd love any gossip.
Yes, I think this is the chat. This is the bane of existence, if you want to call it that way. That the days, like when anybody asks me how your job is, like it's a bunch of good days, bad days. So this actually not a good day, a problem statement. But I don't think there is any shortcut to it, because in some sense, this is how change looks like. You always have early adopters, but those are not your those are not the people that you have to convince. The people you have to convince are your naysayers and the laggards. For healthcare in general, they are mostly found in the regulatory and the compliance teams. And by the impact of the services of healthcare, this is a highly regulated industry. It's an industry that has severe compliance needs. I think the other industry that comes close to healthcare is finance. Those are the only two industries which operate under such strict compliance needs.
Yeah.
I having read a little bit about innovation in finance, I think finance innovations it's light speed ahead of where digital healthcare is, and I think it's a lot part of that is because they are compliant. They have compliance, but they don't have regulations. In healthcare, you have compliance, so you have all of those QMS, you have all of those ISO standards, but you also have MDRs and MDDs and FDAs and DGAs. So I think it's just like a double hard trajectory to approach.
So, I mean, you have built these products before. As far as AI is concerned, where does it actually survive in the ecosystem today, where it meets actual healthcare environment or pharma environment, and where does this product actually quietly collapses? I mean, so do you think it collapses from because of a lack of context or technology, or is it collapse on the compliance side? Does it, or probably it just collapses on the bureaucracy side or the organization culture side? Where does an AI product actually collapses today?
So I will answer it in the kind. I mean, it's not one reason for all different kinds of products. So, for instance, if your AI product is supporting clinical decision making, so it's actually a tool for your care team.
Yeah.
There, the possible reason of its collapse is not integration to workflows, where it's actually not helping in their current workflow, but it is an additional task, and the care teams are already very burdened and they're already very jaded by the technology. So that's core reason a clinical decision support tool would fail. The second reason this category tools fail is the trust. And it's also very interesting to know that accuracy of a model is not equal to a clinical trust. So if your model is 98% accurate, that will not really translate to a 90% clinical trust. And I hear this arguments a lot of time that my doctor made a mistake, my doctor also misdiagnosed. Sure, but that human trust cannot compete with an algorithmic trust. And I don't think, or at least I'm yet to know, and if you know, and if any of your audience knows, to tell me, how can you actually compare a 98% accurate AI model to a clinical accuracy? How do you compute clinical accuracy? Is there a way to compute clinical accuracy? So I think those are the two elements where the clinical decision support tools fail. The tools which are facing the patients fail more often than not by not actually understanding that what patients need is a behavioral support. So if you're giving information, that's great, but you also have to understand that the patients need to be seen, they want to be heard. What is that behavioral element of the patient's journey in disease management that needs support? So I think that's the core element where the patient support programs fail.
That's a very interesting take, actually, and I agree, right? I mean, and we as a native AI company has faced that a lot of time, especially even with Alpha Dev. When we started building it out, we want to build the most fancy, most complex machine learning model ever made, and then what we ended up making, because fortunately we had some very interesting advisors, and when they saw the product, they said no one is going to use it because for them this is just another work, and it needs to integrate in their workflow, so it needs to be extremely easy. It shouldn't look like additional work. So but have you found a way to sort of build trust with AI in your organization? I mean, are there any best practices that someone can sort of implement if they want to create more trust for AI products in their organization?
So I don't think, again, I don't have an answer that fits all situations, but what has helped is actually publications. So what has helped is if I'm being able to draw analogy from published evidence in reputed journals. And also, what has helped is having other industry AI supporters having a panel discussion, you know, percolating the ideas around. So those are the two elements that have helped. But again, my expectation with this is that it is in the same pace as an organization change, where it takes one step at a time. And this is where my endurance journey helps, because many a times where you're at the 32, 33 kilometer mark, or when you finish your swimming, you finish your cycling, and you still have a full marathon remaining, you're not looking at it as of 42 kilometers left after having done, I don't even know what, 4 kilometers swimming, 180 kilometers cycling. You're looking at 1 kilometer at a time. And I think that's a very key translational learning, that when problems are big, for instance, this trust is a massive win. You cannot achieve it overnight. You have to achieve one step at a time, one person at a time, one moment at a time.
Wow, this code should go in our thumbnail, by the way. I,
Okay.
AI transformation in pharma is not about innovation, it's about endurance.
It's about consistency. I think it's about consistency. In fact, I feel a lot of life is about consistency. And people keep asking me, well, what's your motivation? I don't think there is a motivation. I think it's about determination and consistency. Because motivation is that, it's like the flavor of the month. It comes someday, it doesn't come the other day. And you can't keep waiting for motivation. But when your alarm rings in the morning and you have a schedule and you have a race in 6 weeks, you have to practice.
All right. That's going to be new, a lot new for a lot of Instagram goers.
True. I mean, and unfortunately, we live in a world of instant gratification, instant response, instant satisfaction. And this is where I
Motivation of the day.
exactly motivation of the day. And here we're talking about making a change in the organization, which has been around for 20 years and has more than 10,000 people. It's not an overnight thing.
I need to
No?
play for the longer game.
And you have to play the longer game. You only win in the longer game. You have instant gratification in shorter ones, but the win is only a longer game.
So when you're in the game, and I'm sure you talk to a lot of vendors and software developers and model developers who must pitch to you for various reasons. Uh, when you hear those pitch, what are those green flags that you generally look at? And what are those green flags that make you say, okay, these people know what they're doing?
So I'm a big fan of people presenting failures, people presenting gaps, because I think pitches in general are a very marketing has have a marketing approach, and where when you're working with technology as AI, you're not looking for again you're not looking for an explosion. You're looking for honesty because I know that we are not there yet, and we will together get there.
Yeah,
So if you come to me saying that this is we've done this with
we have
90
solved it.
option and exactly we've conquered it, and then I know that this is not a vendor I want to work with because we I know you've not conquered it. I want to know that you can conquer it, and that's my that's my selection criteria. So, for instance, I mean, I was reading this article the other day. It seems that only 15% of pilots within pharma ever get to a real um, phase one.
Deployment. Yeah.
And and to me, this was again going back to our very short term gratitude scenario where there are massive kickoffs, there are massive stakeholder alignments, and everybody's talking about a great project that is in pilot. But nobody's really talked about what after pilot. So
Mm.
15% is a very eyebrow raising number. And I'm looking for a vendor.
A much bigger number than it should be.
It should be much bigger number than this, right? Because 15 is really, yeah. And I think in my vendor, what I'm looking for is the ability that, okay, if this fails, you will tell me how we can change it. You will tell me how we can work together because don't come and tell me everything is golden. It's not.
So, I mean, some meaning that says 85 out of all 100 projects in the pharma start with no long term goal.
Not start, they end with no long term goal.
And no, no.
Yeah. Everything starts with a great long term goal, lots of project plans. But it's only after a pilot that you realize that, oh, this is not going anywhere.
Wow. Founders building AI for pharma actually understand how decisions actually get made inside these organizations. So, I mean, and I think this is such a unique point that you raised is if there's any founder who's not talking about failures, that's a red flag. Uh, what should these founders understand about how decisions are being made inside organizations like yours or in global pharma in general?
I think the two elements, right? One is I would paraphrase that saying that it's not just about talking failures, it's about talking learnings and how do you navigate and mitigate failures. Because what pharma is looking for is a partnership with the team and the capabilities. The other element, I feel like the decision making in pharma is a very long drawn process. So it's unfortunate, but it's a reality that decisions don't get made in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Decisions require a fair number of stakeholders who need to be aligned, who need to be brought together for the project, and who need to be on board with the particular um, product, particular process, particular vendor. And ultimately, it's a process that I mean, the selection process will always have a process around it. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate because I've also worked with startups where we have very lean, mean teams, and you're not always able to keep up with these long cycles of a pharma company. Not being able to keep up with these multiple requirements of different kinds of decks, different kinds of reports, fill in these 20-page long documents, procurement documents, which have been created for traditional IT systems. But it's again, I keep going back to the organizational change framework because this is all part of that slow moving Titanic, which is, which will take time. So today, sales in pharma is not a 6 week, it's 12, 18 months process. And unfortunately, again, this is a bit of a bummer, but stakeholders change in the meantime. So I think overall, there is nothing. I don't have a rosy wand to paint here. It's not. The only silver lining here is that once you're
Yeah.
in. Because then removal in itself is the similarly long process. So like think of that as your finish line.
Wow, that's I've heard this kind of framing for the first time.
No, it's true because we have vendors who have disappeared, and it's for us. It's the same amount of work to get them out of the system.
I always thought, you need to really perform if you have to keep in. Uh,
Uh, no, I mean, I'm growing up again. This is going back to Jaipur and the competitive exams, right? I've always found that cracking the exam was the most difficult part. And one,
okay.
start the exam, and you're in the school or in the college or in the institute,
Yeah.
then it's their problem.
Wow. So on that note, what is so? I mean, I'm obviously I don't want to sort of get into the specifics, but you know, i- when a vendor sort of reaches out to you, and there is a guy who told you, okay, I have this amazing platform ready to deploy it from day one. All the buttons are working. You just need to press the button, right? And then there is another partner that comes in that says, okay, I have the most fantastic team who can build a product for you, right? What is which is the pitch that sort of gets excited, or I mean that excites you the most?
I think a competition of both, where there is already evidence that there is an existing product, there is an existing platform, there is an existing technology, and the capability that this is actually continuously being iterated, or there is a capability to change it, modify it, adapt it depending on the use case. So I think a combination of that. But also, I feel like today, the world where we still sit today, it's it's a very personal relationship based sales. So, I mean, I get a lot of emails, and I'm sure a lot of people on the buy side get a lot of emails. It's not feasible to reply to all, and that's unfortunate because at some level, we are not able to sift and identify who's a good. I mean, my ideal way of approaching this would be that I answer all the emails, I do demo calls with all of them, so I'm making an informed decision.
Yeah.
But it's not feasible with the other things that are already going on in my day. And then what happens is that, like how we find a doctor in India by, do you recommend somebody?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty much like that, that, oh, I have this problem. I either know somebody already because there's just there's ultimately a very small space, or then I'll ask somebody in pharma who's already done this that, who did you do? What do you, who else did you evaluate? So ultimately it becomes a little bit of that. So, and the reason I bring this up is because that people who are starting fresh in the
Yeah.
technology space on the provider side, there is a benefit of partnering or going to conferences, networking events to actually find that individual who is in that space bandwidth to look at your product and become your champion.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, because there are and I know a lot of very good founders who are trying to build something from India for the global pharma space, and most of them have amazing pedigree. Best institutes, best X organizations. Someone's from, let's say, an IQV and so on and so forth. But yeah, and they would have the best minds, best product, best services. But 3 years down the line, they're now thinking to shut shops. And I think precisely because of this, is because they're not able to penetrate, or they're not able to sort of penetrate that relationship inner ring
Yeah.
that we just spoke about. And so, basis you, the recommendation is to participate in as many conferences as you can.
Yes, like find your hook. You need to find that person because after a while, it's unfortunate, but that no, it gets lost in the noise.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get that. I get that, and this is something I'm quite proud about my team. I mean, we understood this pretty well pretty early in our game, that you can't do everything sitting in India. And I remember 2 or 3 years in the business, I started talking to a couple of my own clients and say, okay, can you recommend someone whom you would buy from? Right, and kept on reaching, and then we made a pretty amazing US team, and I think that's one of the best decisions we ever took. So I second what every single word that you said. Okay, let me take the conversation a little on the product side. We discussed about the people, about the companies that are building it. On the product, and you probably see a lot of AI demos and products. Let me ask you this as someone who has seen a lot of them. Is there any AI product in healthcare where you genuinely thought, okay, like this is impressive? And not just a good demo, but I mean something where you felt that this could actually change how healthcare works.
Mm,
And I mean, I don't want you to take names. I mean, if you can, perfect. If you can't, I mean,
so I think, to be honest, I can't think of a name in particular, but I do know that I'm a little bit far removed from areas where AI is doing magic in healthcare. So, for instance, today the AI penetration, AI adoption, AI impact is much felt in the whole imaging diagnostic field, mostly in oncology, where you have multimodal AI as a possibility building up. That's not my focus area. So I don't really look at solutions who are in the market and doing this, but I read about them. And I think that, I mean, I can't think of a name right now, but those are the areas where there is definitely a massive impact by AI image assisted diagnosis, AI image assisted treatment monitoring, and the ability to actually also get these software as medical device statuses up to class 3 on images. So I think that's a fair amount of impact that AI generating in that space.
so you see value in that model, in those products that AI is building up.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, for instance, I mean, in any of those skin cancer conditions, the detection becomes so much more powerful. And even if it is not a clear diagnosis, but it is more a prognostic in the more prognostic space, even then it's very powerful. And it's a great tool for a clinician.
So uh, let's talk a little bit about what you actually sort of do. I mean, which is building health products, and I would assume building digital products for the use of the patients and the end users, as you rightly said.
Mm.
Uh, when you strategize of building a product like that, how is that product different, or how does the strategy or the framework of that product different from what someone is going to make in drug discovery? Because here you are engaging with real patients, and then that's also a sort of a layer of complexity on it.
So for us, actually, the I mean, my focus is mostly been once the product is out in the commercial space, and hence the focus is around the end users, patients, or the
Yeah.
care team members, or the caregivers with the patients are included. And one of the key learnings so far has been the whole behavioral support and the clinical workflow integration. So for if the product has a care team user, then it has to be integrated in the workflows, or then it is providing a massive clinical value to the user that they would actually use and adopt another tool. And my focus in building most of these products is keeping that in mind. So we do a fair amount on user journeys, we do a fair amount of testing of the product and the clinical workflows. How does that actually sit? For the patient, what I've been learning and what I've learned over the years is that information is good. Giving them diary, giving them symptom checker, and all of that is good. But ultimately, They do all of this only when they feel that they are either being heard or seen by their care team. So the digital adoption is very much dependent on that tool being launched by their care team members, either directly or we allow a chat functionality. It could be a asynchronous chat, but some way where the patients have this feeling that they're visible to their care team. So with that in mind, we do a lot of understanding of user unmet needs. We try and understand what are the users actually looking for, where are the gaps in today, what they feel, how can we emotionally support them, and aside from what is the code reason that has been identified for the solution.
So how do you sort of educate your patients? So I mean, let me paint a picture. So if you have been watching the World Cup, which congratulations to us, we won last night. So during the match, Chat GPT is running a huge campaign. So and then so there is an ad like a D2C brand where there's a women cricket team that's playing, and then they're just putting up a prompt on GPT saying, how do we improve our cricketing performance of this women's team, and the GPT's answer, right? So it was so I was so pleasantly surprised by seeing the campaign, because Chat GPT is now a very tier 2 D2C product in India, as they're sort of presenting, right? So they've taken it to sort of that level. Now, comparing that to, something what you do, I mean, you also operate in a similar zone where your job is to make sure that the patient adoption for products and applications like this is higher and higher, right? Taking inspiration from something what GPT is doing at that large of a scale, where do you think is pharma, in that comparison of running campaigns to educate their users on adopting these AI apps? So how is pharma keeping up in the race of making sure that their users get used to AI as compared to a GPT?
Oh, I think we are far behind. I don't think we can. Because again, it depends on which world you're operating, which market you're operating in. So India is a little bit less regulated compared to Europe, UK, US. Here, we cannot directly promote any solution as in we, as in a pharmaceutical company, cannot directly promote the solution. And it has to be um, unbranded, it has to be therapy agnostic. So there are a lot of these constraints. So we cannot, I don't see that at least in the next 5 years, a pharma company is able to do a direct D2C campaign for a medicine that is not a generic drug.
Right. Yeah, you said next 5 years. Then what parts of pharma operation, and not just yours, like the entire ecosystem, what parts of that of a pharma operation do you see changing the most in next 5 years? Like, do you see the biggest impact being created on clinical trials or regulatory, drug discovery, commercial? Which part do you think is going to
So
change?
that's typically the pre-commercialization phase of a asset and the admin tasks within the internal operations of the pharma. And third, I would say, is the insights piece, the competitive and the market insights. All three of these pieces are much more advanced for AI technology innovation and adoption compared to the direct end user space.
And in this, in as a follow up to your answer, any startup founder watching this podcast today, uh which use case he or she should be focusing on most, and I ask from the backdrop of there is a lot of use case, especially on the market intelligence side, as I would assume, that would be commoditized by, let's say, a Claude in 3 years. So in 3 years there are going to be teams inside pharma companies creating their own dashboard just by a prompt on Claude. They don't need any external partner for that, right? So, how does a farmer or how does a startup founder in this space create a mode for himself or herself that is not going to be killed by crop?
I think the answer is going to be somewhere around the compliance side of things because Claude, OpenAI, as in ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, they're not compliance green lighted.
Hmm.
And the room to play here is to build that compliance friendly solution or a compliance friendly usage that sits on top of these LLM tools.
Wow. Maybe I should cut this from the podcast, keep this insight only for myself. Sir, and I'm sort of forced to ask this because you have also sat on the VC side of the table. Some point in your career. When you see sort of these startups coming up today, uh, and when you see the pitches, what is that one thing that you are looking in a startup pitch that's building AI for life sciences today? What is that one thing that you would look more aggressively, and if that's not there, that's not the company you're investing?
So I think it depends where it's a series, which series are we talking about? So
uh,
I would
let's say a seed.
so for a series, say this would very much be two elements for me. One would be the ability to have a product market fit and demonstrate that through numbers. And the second would be the team that they have behind it. So those would be the two big elements, like for me, because I think
What team generally works best? So I mean, let's say there is this guy who's fresh out of an IIT, and who has some amazing tech capabilities. You're already smiling, so I understand. And then there is this guy who has spent 10 years working with big pharma, at, let's say, an IQVIA or a company like that, and who understands that space well, who has the relationships well. So, what is the kind of team that you would sort of put your thoughts behind, on the seats?
for a Series C, I think for a Series C, if those are the two people in the team, then I would very much like to see the person who's experienced, who has the network, to be in the CEO sort of or CCO sort of a role, or at least a role which is nearer that domain. And for the person who comes with a technical background to be leading or being in the technical team. And of course, like now, I mean, we are fortunate enough to have people who might have both. Like for instance, somebody like me, who comes from a very specific industry experience, has over the period gained relevant network as well, built relevant network. So that kind of an experience in the advisory group would be very, very, you know, influential in making that, because this gives you an understanding that this is a well-rounded team where the skills are in the right place. People know what they have to focus on. And again, having worked on across VCs, across companies, I think what I feel like when you're starting up a company, when in the pre-seed or the series A stage, you need you need a very horizontal layer. So you need smart people, you need people who can continuously do, they can be the office managers, they can be your customer engagement. But when you're at Series C, you need a bit more of that vertical line of T as well.
Bit more structure there.
You need both the people who can do across, but that layer is now much more senior, and you have the individual vertical layer, individual in the teams, which need to be assessed and which is contributing to your competence of the team.
Hmm. So, there is again another sort of a, kind of a, I wouldn't say challenge, but obviously this is a discussion that I hear a lot with founders is about the data. I mean, if you're building AI, you need to have access to some sort of data. Otherwise, it's just a wrapper, or so one thing that, I mean, everyone sees a lot in healthcare, and especially with AI projects, is that data technically exist at multiple places. I mean, free data, proprietary data. You have EMR data, clinical trial data, claims, internal pharma data as well if you're working with a client. But everything is very fragmented. So I think pharma companies, big pharma or even medium-sized pharma, will eventually or are planning to build a unified AI data environments, or will they keep on relying on external data ecosystems for still a considerable amount of time?
I think the intent is definite. I think the data awareness is definitely there. I mean, today everybody knows that these interoperable data sets are not useful, or they're only as there is the utility is only a little bit, and you need structured, good quality, reliable data to be able to build. So I think that we've done a whole amount of education and awareness around the requirements for good quality, understandable, interpretable data. In the future, it will have to be a bit of both, Ayush. I think one, because there is so much data that you can simply not just delete.
Yeah.
And so you will need solutions who are able to crack that interoperability with those data sets and unleash the power there. At the same time, the intent moving forward is to actually build data sets which are much more unified and are already talking to each other. So it's not just pharma. I think it's across. There is this need that what we build will gets built somewhere in between of talking to the older data sets, but is still talking to each other and identifying how do you find a way to talk to these data sets, older ones which are not.
Okay. So meaning, and let me know if I've uncovered this right. So what you're saying is, if you're a startup founder building something for global life sciences today in this space, and either you should be building something for the compliance layer on
Mhm.
top of the LLMs, let's say, or you should be offering services that unifies data for pharma companies. I mean, is that are these two use cases that are still bulletproof?
I mean, there are good places to put your money in. Yes.
Got it. Got it. Yeah,
There-
I
there
think
could put your money
I
in.
think this is quite interesting. Let's talk about the workforce side. Pharma companies employ huge numbers of people, and even pharma services companies. Either on the sides of analytics, medical writing, clinical, regulatory ops. If AI really evolves over the next decade, as everyone says, and as we were talking before the episodes about that magic explosion, if that magic explosion really happens, uh, are there roles inside pharma that should be slightly nervous about the future? I know that's a scandalous question to ask.
I mean, why pharma? I feel like the entry level roles are nervous across the board,
Across the board, yeah.
especially in I think the analyst, the associate, and the I mean the today. I mean, my team is very lean today, and the reason it works is because a lot of our research analytical work is not done by a human being. And that in itself is because of AI and LLM models. So
Oh,
I
so it
think
already happened. So the impact has already started.
it's already there. I mean, you hear so many people being made redundant across all service, across the big four, across the top three. So, I mean, even the advisory space, this is already happening. And it's unfortunate because I was discussing with a friend the other day that today we are able to sit on top of these LLM models because we actually did do the grunge work at some point in time. Now the entry level people, they are not given the opportunity to do a grunge work. So how will they ever get to a place where they are actually able to sit on top and use these tools with an experience that and maturity that we
How
have?
do they know which prompt to write?
Exactly. And how do they know that what is hypnosis and what is actually true from the model?
But isn't that too unfair for the younger generation now?
I don't know. I mean, I find this word unfair a bit difficult to answer because what I mean, I don't think life in general is fair. I think life is unfair to begin with. And what I think is unfortunate is they were not warned. I think people who are just coming out of colleges did not get a warning. Whereas the people who are now in school are already aware of this and they will train accordingly and they will train, adapting this. So this is the generation which is actually being thrown in the deep end. So that's definitely not right for them. But then I think every generation has its own share of deep end. So I think, like as a millennial, we had our own deep end. This generation, this is their deep end. Like my parents' generation, they never had internet. So for them, learning the whole use of smartphone, etc., I think it's a bit. I agree with the sentiment here that these entry level jobs are difficult. There are so many redundancies at this particular area and this particular layer.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I mean, having worked with human beings at entry level roles versus having worked with these Claudes and Geminis and co-pilots, you already know which one you prefer. So
I I hate to agree with you, but I do.
I think it's like it's faster. There is no drama. It's like it's the quality of output is so much higher than what you were getting. I mean,
Yes.
it's unfortunate.
Agree.
Yes, exactly. It's hassle free,
Yeah,
and yeah, I wouldn't call it unfair. I think it's unfortunate.
it is. It is. And I'm I think even the generation sort of the Gen Z as sort of we can call them. I think even they cannot operate without AI. I mean, obviously AI is sort of eating up a lot of what they should be doing. That's also a fact. But even they themselves can't be operating without AI because that has become such an integral part of who they are. I mean, so the old good days of mental simulation, that's in the past, and yeah, as I agree. I mean, that's unfortunate. Uh, let's let's stop there before we sort of start getting trolled by agents. I get a lot. I have some very strong comments on these things, which I keep on saying in my teams internally, and I'm not I'm not very likable that ways. But let me.
No, that's true, and I feel like for instance, like why I have strong reservation for the word unfair. So, for instance, take dentistry as a vocation, right? Up until today, dentistry is not a. There are too many dentists in India. The kind of uptake of dentists of a new dentist in the market is limited. There is so much of potential that gets validated.
Yes.
AI, that's one vocation AI can never replace. So it's now it's suddenly fair to the dentist. Is that how we would want to like articulate that?
Yes.
That's why I think, like at some levels, it will the presence of AI is going to be unfair to certain industries. It's going to be fairer to industries like dentistry, which are a bit more hand based. They're a bit more artistic. It's a bit more what is the word for it? It's a bit more dexterous field.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
agree.
dentists and mediocre dentists would then be forced to actually perfect their craft because now they will get valued for the perfection. So that's, I think, a silver lining of what LLMs are doing in the world today for the Gen Z.
And I agree with you. I mean, it has been, I mean, quite fortunate for me the whole AI thing that happened because as a founder, you know, I I used to feel a lot limited because there are only a limited number of things you can sort of delegate,
Mm.
and then the other people can do exactly how you want them to do, right? But now because of AI, I'm able to pursue at least 10 times the ideas that I would do 5 years back.
Mhm.
And I mean, fortunately, because I know the right prompts to put, because I've gone through that drill. So yeah, I mean, it's very fortunate for me, 100%. And if any kid today understands that part and finds his or her way of going through the grunge, still, I mean, that kid is going to be the leader of the tomorrow.
It's absolutely agree to that.
Let me take this to a different topic, and I need to understand from you, and especially because you've also been on the VC side. From a global AI adoption in pharma, where do you see some of the best things happening? So which region I'm talking about? So do you see Europe, uh, let's say, or the UK, the US? Which countries do you see, which regions do you see as the emerging markets where you think the environment is conducive, the compliance is nice, the talent is nice, the investment is there? Where do you see the most impact happening or the most interesting things happening?
Oh, I think it's India. It's
Oh, you
India.
see India.
I absolutely. I think India is
Yeah.
a interesting space for AI innovation in healthcare. The other two markets where I feel there is a lot more interesting stuff happening is US and Brazil. So those are the three markets. I think there is a there is a very mature, adoptive audience around digital technologies. There is um, enough capabilities to build something which is meaningful, impactful. And all said and done, I think the way FDA also responds to innovations and the innovative frameworks is
Yeah.
actually quite promotive.
Oh, I never thought you would say Brazil. Wha Can you talk a little more on Brazil? Why would you pick Brazil? I understand India. I understand US.
I think it's a very mature, digitally mature population, and they do so much interesting stuff with digital innovation and within that whole South America landscape. I mean, they're a little bit on the they don't have the technical talent of India or the the funding of US,
Yeah.
so they don't get highlighted as much. But it's a very digitally suave ecosystem.
Oh wow. I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing Brazil actually. Wow.
Oh, interesting. Well, you know, find some data against it. I would be very be a
Let
time. Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, we keep on looking for talent everywhere, and for obvious reasons, it gets difficult and difficult to find good talent. I mean, even in India for tech. I mean, because I don't probably the similar points that we discussed. It's not easy to find the right talent or right young talent fresh out of college in India today. So there is a very limited pool who are really good talent. But then because of the startups and the ecosystem just blasting away, for every talent, they have 10, 12 offers, the right talent, right? And then there is a large amount of pool which sort of probably no one wants or just want because they're desperate about it. So
Yeah. Right.
we were also sort of forced to look outside, and we keep on sort of hiring people. I just set up a center in Manila in Philippines, and I never thought I'll find really good data science scientists in Manila, which I do, which I did. I'm so proud about. So Brazil is one thing which I would definitely now now look home.
So yeah, let me know.
Perfect. So we are at the end of this discussion now. Before I let you go, let me ask you this. So, if you could sort of magically invent one AI capability for pharma, what would you build that doesn't exist today?
Oh, one magic capability I think would be to do. Oh, it's very hard. Are we talking about internal solution or external
Yeah,
solution?
let me paraphrase. Let me ask you this, and I'm a sucker for gossip. So, and that should be a great question to end this conversation as well. What do you think is the biggest lie the healthcare industry or pharma industry tells itself about AI?
Oh, that that like that we are the like the adoption of AI is great. We are using AI.
You're using AI. That's the biggest lie the pharma industry is telling itself.
Yes, I don't think that AI penetration is as much as we can call it as an adoption. There is some AI, but I don't think it's AI led. I mean, pharma industry is not AI led. In fact, I don't think healthcare is AI led. It's a very much traditional led where it's AI supported, or rather the okay. Let me rephrase that. It's the vision is that healthcare industry is AI supported. I don't think it can ever be AI led. But today we are not even AI supported. We are in some places where there is isolated AI plugs in, and that's about it.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's a lot of space for innovation. Yes.
That's obviously from where you're looking at, whichever angle you look at it. I think that also means a lot of opportunities, but that also means there's a there's a long way to go. Neha, this was a really fascinating conversation. Thank you for sharing such honest insights about AI and healthcare in general. And thank you everyone for listening to the best AI show in pharma. And I think Neha gave us some of the best uh, playbook rules on anyone who's trying to build for pharma services, build sitting in India or in Brazil. Uh, Thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you in the next episodes. Bye bye.
Thanks, Ayush, for having. Bye.